Welcome to another broadcast of Light for the Journey, where we take a look at life situations and we explore them through the lens of Scripture and hopefully help as we travel this road. I am Pastor Carl Tenney, and I pastor here. This is my friend and goes to our church,
Trent D.
Trent. And behind the cameras is Todd James, and this wouldn't be happening without him. Certainly appreciate him showing up and running, and he's kind of running the show tonight. I don't remember where I was going to go from here. About the church. It's located in Rochester, Minnesota, and if you're ever in the area, we have our church services. They start at 10:30. There's a Bible class that starts at 9:30. But I think it's a great place to go. I think you have something to say about this.
I would definitely agree. We're relatively new to the area. My wife and I, we've only been here for about a year now. We've been searching around for different churches, have attended a few churches here and there, and this is really the first one we have found that made us feel like we were back at home. So that was the goal that we were set out to accomplish, and I think we've accomplished.
Well, I know we sure are glad that you and Rachel have come our way, and we just feel so blessed by that. And you guys bring a lot with you, and we're glad to have you. Which actually brings us to this particular session tonight. You are also a student at Crossroads College here in town.
Yes, sir.
And, sir, come on, Trey. This kind of applies to you, so I'm going to pick your brain as we navigate through this, and there'll be a clip here in a minute, and I'll let Todd know when to play that. But what's your major again?
Crossroads actually offers a dual ministry program, a dual degree program, so you get a bachelor's degree in theology and ministry, and then you also get a bachelor's degree of your choice. And for me, I went ahead and I'm studying music composition through them. So when I graduate here in about 2 more years, I'll have, like I said, a ministry degree and a music degree.
And you hope, if I remember right when we were talking, you hope to have a recording studio?
Yeah. That's my emphasis. That's my goal as far as like the music end is concerned, and that's what I would like to try to get to in due time. Okay. And you'll be taking on doing recordings, record recordings? I want to try to span like the wide variety of music. Like instead of just being like a hip hop producer or a Christian music producer, I want to be able to try to work with all different kinds of acts and just bring them all together under one roof and create music. For our audience, I hope this is okay. I didn't ask you, and we can always cut this, and because it's being pre-recorded. For our audience's sake, Trent is a relatively new Christian, and so he has come to Christ. I'm sure we'll do some more of these. I'm sure you'll at some point. We're not going to do that tonight, but I'll give you a chance to give your testimony how that all plays out. But what I love about having him on the broadcast tonight is that he brings a freshness, and he brings not being Christian, not growing up in church. There's some perspective that you bring that I think is healthy and a good perspective. So, having said that, moving back to campus life and what's going on, political correctness, there's a clip I'm going to have Todd play now for you guys, and we're going to listen to it. And then when it's done, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So,
also in California, there's a controversial resolution now being considered by the University of California. This week, the Board of Regents is meeting to discuss a proposal called the Statement of Principles Against Intolerance. It's a right for students not to be offended. But some fear it could backfire and will silence free speech. Will it? Leslie Marshall is a Fox News contributor, syndicated radio talk show host, and Huffington Post blogger. Denny Borelli, chief political correspondent for the Conservative Review and a Fox News contributor. Welcome to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning. Denny,
good morning.
Let me start with you. Is this an appropriate protection of shared values, of correct actions, or is it PC out of control?
Yeah, I have deep concerns about this policy, Eric, and it's not only anti-freedom of speech, it's also anti-educational freedom. When you look at the fact that individuals will be hampered, students will be unable to talk about certain issues, especially current event issues or even everyday mundane issues. And clearly, I do believe this is a real problem. It's anti-educational. For example, the importance of immigration reform and the importance of defunding sanctuary cities. When what happened, the tragic murder with Kate Steinle, they weren't even be able to talk about something like that. Even in the sports world, Brandon Marshall of the New York Jets recently said that black players were treated differently and that Tom Brady's race played a role in this overturning the suspension of the Deflategate. They can't even talk about issues like that.
Leslie, is that true? I mean, is this a situation where if someone is offended by anything, then everyone's got to shut up?
No, I'm here in California, and that is not if you read the specifics. And actually, the reason that it came about, some very horrific things have happened on some of the University of California campuses. There have been people that have been turned away who have handicaps or wheelchairs. There have been extremely vulgar, racist, and bigoted discriminatory remarks that have been spray painted with graffiti on some of the campus walls. And there's been a problem with women being turned away from certain community organizations within the college, including sororities, because of their weight. So this doesn't just have to do with religion, which there have been some anti-Jewish anti-Islamic problems within the university system as well. This is, I believe, reinforcing a mission statement that says we will not tolerate hatred, bigotry, discrimination. This does not take away, and they cannot take away, and they should not take away the First Amendment rights of these students, and it will not prohibit free speech.
If they have those statements already, why do they need this new action, Leslie?
Because of some of these issues that came about, and I believe, quite frankly, to sidestep potential lawsuits, to nip it in the bud by being more specific and actually even broadening and more defining more specifically their anti-discrimination and their upholding that we will not tolerate the intolerance of others in such a multicultural educational system.
Here's what some of the part of Denny, let me read you what part of the Regents' proposal says. And it's understandable. Intolerance has no place at the University of California. We define intolerance as unwelcome conduct motivated by discrimination against or hatred toward other individuals or groups. It may take the form of acts of violence or intimidation, threats, harassment, hate speech, derogatory language reflecting stereotypes or prejudice, or inflammatory or derogatory use of culturally recognized symbols of hate, prejudice, and discrimination. I mean, what's wrong with that? I mean, anyone can understand that. You don't want to have that on the college campus, right? It's not appropriate.
Yeah, listen, this is common sense, Eric. And listen, there are individuals who, I personally, I don't believe that this is something that would be relevant, because it's going to create an even more intolerance of individuals. It's going to also create, we have no idea how many people, how are you going to prove the intolerance is even taking place? This is going to, I think, increase claims of intolerance, create an avalanche of intolerance, and also will dilute the real cases that need to be investigated.
Leslie, last week, you think that's going to happen?
I don't agree with that. I think what it's saying is we're putting it out there. Private universities and state universities do this across the country. This is not something new, but this is directly addressing some of these areas that have taken place within the University of California campuses. And I think they're hoping, as we're in fall and going toward a new year, that more people will think before they are intolerant, not stifling their free speech, just reminding them that you don't need to be discriminatory or bigoted to make the same point.
Well, I think this will have a huge effect on the educational experience on these campuses.
Sometimes they've talked about PC being rampant in some of the campuses across the country. We'll see what the regions do as they try to sort this out this week. Leslie and Denny, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, so that was the clip from Fox. I appreciated that clip. I'll share a few thoughts. And then and I have no clue where this is going to go, Trent. Actually, I hope that there's dialogue. You and I talked about the president, for example, and we kind of are on opposite ends. Yeah. And yet we're friends. Oh, yeah. And we can love and care for one another and respect each other and have, just a healthy respect. Which I think is what this is really all about, this political correctness and intolerance. And at some point there, the need for healthy debate. And when you go, what's so ironic about this being in the University of California, and so universities, part of going to college, part of your going to college is that you pursue truth.
Yep. Okay,
it's a pursuit of truth, in a place where you can have dialogue and if I use a political term, across the aisle, so to speak, Republican, Democrat, that kind of thing, have healthy dialogue. And at what point, does it become discriminatory? What I really see as I look at this, and I ran into this in the local school where I was pastoring, where a school wanted to change its laws on discrimination, and they went through that process, and the wording that they had was right on to begin with, and so I didn't understand the need for to redo it. I knew they had an agenda. For the University of California, I wrote down here they had a definition already that it was unwelcome conduct motivated by discrimination. In other words, doing things against people. Now that makes sense to me. That's discrimination. But when we sat down to have dialogue, if I'm Christian but I'm not Jewish, can we not have a debate about God? And we're certainly going to have differences. Or what if I was Muslim, and you were Christian, and could we not have a debate about God? And at what point does that become discrimination? And here's a university, and I think it's interesting that they want to rewrite and press it. And the real problem from my perspective, and I'm going to come to you in a minute.
Oh, yeah.
The real problem from my perspective is that it seems like we're trying to legislate, at least the school is trying to force people to have a certain behavior. And from what I can see and what I spend my life doing in preaching the gospel is I know that only a heart change really changes the way a person acts and their behavior. And so, when I look at people of other race, other people who politically oppose me, I don't see them as my enemy. Surely we can have dialogue. And I just find it ironic that in an institution of education where you want to have this open dialogue and this exploration, that they want to rein it in, and I just see it as a stripping away of our First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, And so that's my take, and I see the real answer as one heart, one unto Christ. Of course, being a Christian, one heart, one unto Christ is where that really. I don't treat people I didn't grow up in the church, so I don't treat people the way I used to. I used to be pretty nasty to people, but I don't do that. God changed me, and I see people with value. I see people, they're made in God's image, so they are worthy of that. So, having said that, you're in school, you're having professors. I'm guessing there's dialogue that goes on. There's questions. You get to ask questions. Hey, wait a minute, I disagree with that. Do you do that kind of thing in school, actually?
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I'm, kind of surprised by the fact that, UC, like it is a public university, is trying to go through these measures of almost, like you said, censoring certain exploration and conversation in the classroom. I go to a very small, Christian college, like a private Christian college. And that doesn't even take place on our campus. When we're in the classroom, of course, there's still the same hot button topics as anywhere else, the LGBT community, the Islam religion,
Sure.
Things like that. And we are more than welcome to bring up and explore and talk about those topics during class, during the four Gospels or during like a scripture course or things like that. And if there's anything that we personally disagree with, I remember last year we had a big discussion about, what is the race of Jesus Christ. He is portrayed a lot as very light-skinned, very white, and there were several students at our school who didn't quite believe that, who thought that he may have been of a darker complexion. That is a very sensitive topic. That is something very difficult to discuss. And we had the freedom to do that, like I said, at a small Christian college. So it does kind of amaze me, and it does kind of disappoint me for those students who are paying a significantly more amount of money than I am to go to the University of California, a public school, and they're now, like you said, being censored and almost being forced to not explore those ideas and not talk about those things.
I think for the university, in their defense, though, I think they have like the sororities who are practicing some discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, that's a problem for them. They've got graffiti on the walls,
Yeah.
that kind of the hatred kind of stuff. I mean, it is a problem. I just don't think the fix is more defined rules.
Yeah.
You know, and I think what it does, from where I'm standing, is that it slowly strips away, you know, freedom of speech. When can I be free to disagree with you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we disagree. You know, we like I said, in politics, we see things differently, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, over time as we do these podcasts. You know, I just don't see that fixing it. From your perspective, then, do you know, as a younger generation, I mean, do you feel like we're what do you think about political correctness in general?
I think it's gotten, in general, I think it's got completely out of hand.
Okay.
To be completely honest, I do understand where the university is coming from. Of course, when you have outright discrimination, you have hate speech being graffitied on property and things like that. Like, yeah, obviously your culture there has got pretty reversed on you, and those are definitely things that should not be happening on a college campus. Like you said, though, I don't believe that this censorship of sort is the fix to it. You know, you're always you can trace it back to the 60s, to the 20s, and long before that, we've always had discrimination, we've always had hate speech, and we've always had the public execution of those things. And now, you know, you do have a university, you can kind of applaud them for at least acknowledging that they do have such a problem on their campus, and they are trying to figure out measures of how to correct it and how to better the atmosphere and better the environment for the students. But at the same time, like you said, you're tiptoeing on that boundary line of, you know, are you protecting students or are you stripping away like First Amendment rights? And like I said, when it comes down to like political correctness and, you know, you can't say certain things or you can't do certain things out of fear of a lawsuit, more or less, that's what it comes down to. Is it's just, it's insane. Like it's gotten out of hand. Like you said, I can't talk about certain things in a classroom. Like I can't talk about the LGBT community and disagree with them without being labeled or looked at, you know, as an ignorant, intolerant person. And I just think that that's, you know, we've talked several times too about the issue of now, you know, your job being kind of on the line as far as gay marriages and things like that. Where do your rights stand as far as, you know, you turned down a gay couple and now all of a sudden you have, you know, the government knocking at your door.
I could have my church being sued.
And you could have your church being sued, and that is your, like, that is your right, like your religious constitutional right to uphold your beliefs within this sanction. And like I said, like the ignorance and the intolerance and the freedom of speech and all these things are just getting so mixed together and so just not worked out in the wash that we are now forming like a community. We're forming a world where, yeah, you have to step on eggshells everywhere you go.
When I was your age, as a young believer, I was reading some different things, and one of the things that I came across was a term called humanism. And humanism, and our society is doing it. Humanism, as I understand it to be defined, is where man tries to solve his own problems. And I guess that's why I take the approach that I do, that you know, we have a creator. I truly believe that we have a creator, and he has designed us. He knows how we're made. He knows where we're flawed. And so if it's going to get fixed, who but the creator could actually fix it? Mm-hmm. And so that's where I'm coming from. You know, I'd love to get you into this, Todd. You know, I'm sitting over there thinking, man, I want to go hear Todd's input, because I think he'd have some neat stuff to say too. How are we doing with time, by the way? How much time do we have? 7 minutes. About 10 minutes. Okay, so we can wrap this up. Well, and want to do that. You know, I think humanism is part of the problem, and we see it. And see, and this is where you and I come into some discrepancies in government. We see the government trying to fix all our problems too, and I don't think that's really going to be the answer. And here I'm looking at an institution, but that's scary for me because institutions are the educational institutions are the place where you should have the greatest expression of differences being expressed, and exploration of those differences and then discovery.
That's really what college is all about, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What other...
Teaching you how to think, and
where
how to
else are you
critique.
supposed to go? Like you said, if you take that away, if you take away the cross-communication within a college campus, like where does one go to receive such experience? Like I look at it, this is kind of like a snowball effect from here, but I look at it as in 10 years from now, if this kind of catches on as the norm, are we going to have American students leaving the country to pursue education because they're not comfortable with the censored, washed down version of education that America now has to offer?
Here's a thought I had. I mean, at what point does it become, indoctrination when it's only one-sided? That's indoctrination, when you just have one perspective. If we're only going to do one perspective, then we're indoctrinating people rather than educating people.
Who controls that perspective, too? That would be my second question.
Yeah, good point.
If the University of California really wants to push this through and really wants to start, like you said, we were talking earlier about censoring their education, the only way we thought that would be possible would to be almost go through and kind of rewrite, pick and plug different things out of their books, out of their curriculum and things like that. Now all of a sudden, like I said, you have a washed down version of an American history class. You have a washed down version of, economics, of politics, of everything. Like you're not truly receiving the full education. And who's making those decisions? That's my question. Would it be the president of the school? Would it be, a senator? Would it be a politician within the state of California? Who would have that final control of saying, okay, I deem this inappropriate, I deem this appropriate? And you're almost glorifying that one person to the same pedestal that God sits on. Why should that one person, a human, have that kind of influence and that kind of value over what thousands and thousands of students are being taught?
Yeah.
And you said that's just a very scary concept to me.
That's a great question, though. Who would do that?
I made a comment before too. Is this whole thing kind of reminds me of in ancient history when Rome was amassing their huge empire. They were going out and conquering these little villages and these little tribe people and completely destroying any evidence or any history that these people ever existed, and just wiped them off the face of the map. And now, here we are thousands of years later, and we know little about the surrounding areas that before Rome was Rome. And I look at it now, we're almost doing that to ourselves.
Whole cultures and societies are lost.
Yeah, and now we're it's not like we're being taken over by, another empire. Our empire has grown so big that now we have different sections of our country covering up our own history. We're covering up our own history. We're destroying, if I believe if these people had it their way, the whole concept of racial segregation and discrimination in the 60s and 70s wouldn't be taught. Things like that. And it's how do you justify just completely I remember 9/11 was one of them they wanted to kind of take out of the books. How do you justify doing that? That's not a true...
That's censorship.
That's not a true education.
No, that's not looking at history. Well, he's sharing with me. I got about three minutes. We can go over a little bit, but I should try to wrap this up. Light for the journey is, again, a couple scriptures come to mind for me. One is because we're talking about freedom, that John writes in chapter 8, he says, if the Son sets you free, you shall be free indeed. Another scripture comes to mind is that if the Lord builds, unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain, and so we can go to these institutions and try to manage bad circumstances and situations, but still I think when you bring in when you bring the Lord into these things, and until you do, it's us trying to fix our own problems. Yep. And we don't do that so well. We just don't do that so well. And so, just a plug for the Lord. I want to do that. Again, a plug for the church, Oak Hills Wesleyan Church. We invite you to come. I really enjoyed this, Trent. Thank you. And Todd, thank you for manning those cameras. I'm anxious to see how this thing came out. Well,
and since we're shamelessly plugging at this point, Crossroads College,
yeah, there you go.
Rochester, Minnesota. Look into it. Great 4-year university. Men's and women's athletics, things of that nature. So
we've just met a lot of the students just this semester. It's kind of new for me. I'm relatively new. I've been here about 3 years, and just a lot of great people coming from your college. So that's good plug. Yeah. Miss Heller would like that.
Oh yeah.
And so well, I think that will pretty much do this. Thanks for tuning in with us, and look forward to next week.
Yep. Thank you.
God bless.